Hi boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, and Gorilla fans all over the world. My name's Robbo and this is Gorilla TV. And tonight we have the pleasure of sitting down with Amanda Whitey Whitehead. She's the Quafford W Player Welfare Manager here at the Gorillas. She's also a member of the Queensland Cystic Fibrosis Advisory Committee. I think I got that right. Ex-player until on the weekend when we were very, very short in the reserves and she filled in. And just a lovely, lovely girl. Whitey, welcome to Gorilla TV.
Thanks, Robert.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
This is pretty cruisy on Gorilla Talk.
I like this.
We've got our
Coopers.
sponsors. Yep.
Get around them.
So, Whitey, I'm going to ask you obviously a little bit about your role
Yep.
within the Gorillas. But first of all, I want to find a bit about where you grew up. I know you're a born and bred Queenslander, mad state of origin supporter.
I am. Born and bred in Brizzy, just down the road actually. First started at Capera, then parents moved up to Up Kedron, so just behind Ferny Grove there. So always been around the area. But we've got family sort of far North Queensland as well, so spent a lot of time in the bush.
So you haven't really, it was the same as Maxi that we had on a couple of weeks ago. You haven't really ventured too far from the Grange.
No, you don't venture far from home when it's a good place. So no, I haven't ventured very far at all.
Now, as a young Whitey, when you were growing up, what sports did you play? Because I know it wasn't just AFL. I believe you were a pretty good little rugby player, I believe.
I was around there. I was actually a gymnast before I was anything else. So I was a semi-professional gymnast for 13 years and then decided that gym's great, but life's bigger and better playing other sports. So I got into touch football and then got into rugby league from there and kind of stuck with league. Couldn't play with the boys anymore and there wasn't really a pathway for girls in league, so I headed down the AFL path with a few of my mates so I could play mixed for a little bit longer.
Yep.
Headed down that path and then sort of found a home there. I found a home in the AFL and found that my size didn't matter in this kind of game. So
that's a good thing about AFL. It doesn't matter whether you're big or you're short like you and me.
Like I look tall on the camera, but I'm 5 foot nothing.
We play tall, don't we?
That's it, mate.
Yeah, you played tall on the weekend, that's for sure.
I took a speckie.
When you did take a speckie. when did you first start playing AFL? How old were you when you first started playing?
I was 13. Yeah, so I was 12, just turned 13.
Yeah, and what club was that at?
Ferny Grove Falcons.
Ferny Grove Falcons.
Yeah, started as a junior Falcon and then stuck through there till under 14s. So I played 2 years actually in the under 14s with the boys.
Yeah.
And then from there went to Sherwood.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember the Ferny Grove Falcons song? You remember a little bit? Oh,
It's the Geelong song.
It's a Geelong song, is it?
Yeah.
So that's the Cats. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Now,
And don't ask me to sing it because I don't like Geelong, so...
And we probably don't want to sing another club song
No.
on Gorilla Talk TV.
Gorilla Talk, yeah.
What did you love about the game of AFL? What was it about AFL where you thought, this is a sport for me?
The strategicness of it. So I've always been really intrigued with the strategicness of AFL. It's not just a kick and catch chase kind of game. It was... If you went a certain way or, we were looking to move the ball in a certain way, you had to be very strategic about how you did it, otherwise it was just going to be a turnover. I like the space as well, like you have such a good opportunity to move the footy at such great speeds because of how much space we have. I really enjoyed that. And then obviously on the flip side there was other sports that connected into it. So Gaelic, for example, I got very interested in Gaelic and it connected very well with AFL because obviously it's a form.
Is that from watching the Gaelic football, like Australia versus Ireland sort of series and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so I really got really interested in that and then just worked out that the two games connected really well. I also enjoy AFL, especially now that they're the leaders in everything they do. Women, putting the first women's league out there, doing it as well as what they did. Like year one, they couldn't have asked for a better outcome. So they were always on the front foot and they're always trying to get better. So I like that about the AFL.
Well answered, I like that. You're quite a thinker of the game.
Some people
on
say that.
I saw that on the weekend. I thought, I can see a coach there someday.
There is a coach in there.
There is definitely a coach in there. Now, as I touched at the start, you're
Yep.
a member of Queensland Cystic Fibrosis
Fibrosis
Advisory
Queensland, yeah.
Committee, Queensland. Now, obviously, that is something that's very, very close to your heart.
Yep.
And I know before we spoke tonight, I asked if it was okay if we sort of share that, but
Yeah, of
it's your story.
Yeah.
So, are you able to share some of your own personal story?
Yeah, so obviously I have cystic fibrosis. So cystic fibrosis is a genetic condition. You're born with it. There's no cure for it. There's no known cure. It's actually very hard for them to sort of go down that path. We have a lot of experts in the field, but unfortunately, right now there's not a cure for it. Genetics is just one of those things, unfortunately. It mainly affects your lungs, but also affects the rest of the organs in your body as well. So liver, heart, pretty much everything, pancreas. So yeah, I'm very lucky. I am 30 next month. My parents were told when I was born I was lucky if I made it to 48 hours, and then if I did, I was lucky to make it to my second birthday, and then if I did, I'd be really lucky to make it to 10. Got to 10, made a big deal of it, as you do. You got kids, mate. You make a big deal of it.
Yep.
And then they said if I sort of make it past that, then I'm a bit of a miracle child. So we made it to 16, and every milestone birthday, my parents are very big on making sure we make a big deal of it. So to make it to 30, if you asked me 8 years ago, will I be sitting here talking on a couch with you about this, I would say no. But I'm here. I've only got less than a month and we hit 30, and I am the only female in Australia that plays a high contact sport and at my age that has cystic fibrosis. So up until 2 years ago, there was another girl playing in Victoria that played AFL in like their bottom league. But she stopped playing. She only played for one season and then she stopped playing, and I'm actually the only female currently that plays.
It's an incredible story, and obviously thank you very much for sharing that. I really do appreciate that, because I know how difficult that can be for some people. And you are inspirational. And I remember when I met you No, you are. It is an incredible story and journey that you've obviously gone on. Now, I know when you were a young footballer, you were quite a handy little footballer. I did a bit of my research, and I know that with having the cystic fibrosis, there was a lot of stuff that you had to do behind the scenes to get you up for games.
Yeah, definitely.
Can you share a bit of that?
Yeah, I guess it was just you sort of learn what energy you need to get out in that field. So it's always sort of even just making sure my lungs are okay. So doing my physio a couple of nights before, making sure that I'm doing a good session, making sure that every day I'm taking my medication, I'm on top of it. It is really important to be able to get out there, especially if we play a sport it's in the winter here. So obviously when that cold starts to set in, especially I've played at clubs where there always seems to be a creek around us, so it's always a little bit chillier than everywhere else. It's just being very aware of what I need. You know, if it's a midday game, then I know I'm going to burn more energy, so I need to make sure that I'm carb loading. I need to make sure that I'm eating high fats, high proteins, something that's going to keep my blood sugars up during the game, so that I don't get to halftime and then just sort of die off. So there's a lot of prep work that goes into prior to me even getting to a field and putting on a jersey. So yeah, it's tough.
Oh, look,
It's tough.
I couldn't even begin to understand what that would be like, but obviously you've known no different.
Exactly.
So, and what I've always liked about you, from only knowing you for 5 minutes, is you take everything head on. There's nothing that gets in your way, and that's probably what I find so incredible about you, is you challenge yourself every step of the way, and to just play the game of AFL for as long as you have, and to, as you said, there's only one other person in Victoria that's doing it. That's an incredible achievement just in
Yeah.
itself, mate. You must be quite proud of yourself, and I have no doubt your parents would be very proud of you too.
They are. They, to be honest, came from a huge rugby league family. So when I first started playing AFL, they had no idea about the game. They obviously know it happened, but they didn't know much about it. But my dad got really involved. He ended up becoming a goal umpire. My brother got really involved as well. He was actually AFL listed for a couple of years as a goal umpire.
Okay.
So it kind of like became sort of a family game for us. Rugby league used to be that, and then we sort of moved to the AFL. And yeah, my parents have always been proud, and they've always, held me to a high account. Yes, I have what I have, but I'm just like everybody else. You can do exactly what everybody else does, but you can do it better. And one thing I always talk to, in the advisory committee that you touched on, I talk to a lot of parents with newborns with cystic fibrosis, and what I always tell them is my parents were very big on, yes, I have what I have, but I can change the world with what I have, so don't go out there and just sort of play the poor me card, but they encourage me to sort of go out there and use my superpower, as my dad always used to call it. It was my superpower. It's nobody else has your superpower, you have it. So go out and do good with it, make a change with it.
It's a very good way of looking at it and thinking about it if you think about it. I also believe when you're a youngster and playing football as well, you got into umpiring. Why umpiring?
I did. It was actually...
Not that there's anything wrong with umpiring.
No.
I just know that you and me sometimes can get a bit frustrated on the bench, and they do a fantastic job, the umpires.
They do. We need more of them, actually.
We do. And females too in that space.
Females, definitely. I actually got into it, one of my school teachers in high school, he heard that I played and he said, have you ever tried umpiring? And I was like, not at all, mate, like, not interested. And he was like, what about goal umpiring? And I said, oh, I'll give it a crack, why not? And it was actually it would have been the state games. So it was like Met North versus Met East and that kind of thing. And yeah, I ended up going, it was at Sherwood. So I ended up going to that carnival and I goal umpired. It was the first time I'd ever umpired. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Just what you think is wave your flags, you're all good. And
as long as it goes through the middle.
Exactly. As long as it's through the middle, it's easy. But I actually learnt a lot about the game, being down there and watching it.
Different angles.
Different angles. But you also get a good sense of the game down there. Like that's how I started to really learn, especially as a goal umpire, you're taught to follow the play, so you're taught to learn how to read the play and where the ball's going so you can anticipate the movements. So it was very...
We have a phone going off in the
that's
background.
a fine. That's a fine. Whoever's phone is going off.
I think it might be Dan's.
Our
Dan,
general
you're
manager.
in trouble with my wife here. What I wanted to get to as well, though, is obviously, touching on the cystic fibrosis. I want to move a little bit now more into the football. Tell us some of your most special moments that you've had playing football. I know you played, and don't say it was a premiership under Fred, because that'll give Fred, our reserves coach,
No,
a
it wouldn't have been my premiership under Fred. No offence, Freddie. It was a good premiership. It was a good year. Probably making my first ever representative side.
Yep.
That would probably be my highlight. So
Was that in 2010, if I've done my research right?
it would have been around then.
Yeah. Queensland team?
No, it would have been prior to that. It would have been South East Queensland.
Okay.
Yeah, but I did play in the first inaugural Queensland Schoolgirls. So that would have been around that same time as well, and then obviously played in the Queensland State side as well. So, but no, it would have been possibly making that team. It was an under-16s team, and I made it at 14.
Yeah.
So that was massive. My parents took me to this trial day at Cooperoo. No idea what was going to happen that day. I actually had been in hospital. I'd only got out 2 days prior. So I'd been in hospital for 14 days. And I got out 2 days prior. So Mum was like, just take it easy, do what you can. If you don't make it, it's okay. And I got out there, absolutely smashed it, had a great time. And made the team, went to Cairns, and made the All-Star team that year as well. And yeah, it was a highlight. I met some amazing people up there that really took care of me. This would have been the first trip that Mum didn't come with me. Obviously, I carry a lot of medication, I carry a lot of equipment with me, so for her to be able to, as Michelle knows, that's behind the camera, being a mum and having to hand these things over to people who you don't really know is massive. And my mum had to hand over, I guess, that responsibility to my team manager, Cherie. And Cherie Brockwell is, honestly, if it wasn't for her, I would have never stuck with footy. She's an absolute leader in women's footy, and it's actually really upsetting that she's no longer in the space.
Yeah.
Fiona McClarty, who's now the head of the Suns, was my coach. And those two ladies just looked after me.
Yeah.
They took me under their wing. They made sure. I still remember, you will laugh about this. We've walked from the accommodation to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it was probably a 100-metre walk, if that. We got to the ground and Cherie turned around to me, Mama Brockwell, turned around to me and said, so I got the nickname Whitey from that team because there was two Amandas and they ended up just calling me Whitey, and that's how Whitey kind of stuck. And Cherie turned around to me and goes, Whitey, hey, did you take your medication this morning? And I was like, yep. And one of my mates who was in the room with me turned around and was like, don't lie. And I was like, yeah, I definitely took it. And she was like, no, you didn't. And she got me by the collar of my shirt at 14 and walked me back to the accommodation, made me take my medication, and walked me all the way back. And then they benched me for the first quarter just to pay me a lesson. And I never, ever went on one of those trips and never took my medication. I made sure I took it before anybody
So she
knew.
was looking after you and mothering you at the same time.
Definitely.
Which is probably what your mum wanted.
100%. And when we got back and she told her, Mum was just like, well, I tried to tell you, you had to do what you're told. You didn't.
Yeah.
But that for me is an absolute highlight. Those two women changed my aspect of what the game looked like and what it meant for females and where we were going.
So from what you're sort of saying to me, it's a lot about the people you've met along the way rather than actual winning necessarily big games themselves.
100%, man.
Yeah.
100%. I've won 3 premierships now. But no premiership will ever take away the people that you meet.
Yeah.
The people that you meet on and off the field, the relationships you make, the friendships you make, the networking you build will far surpass a premiership. Premierships are great, but medals only last for so long.
Yeah.
Then they become
It says a lot about you as a person, Whitey, because I probably would have said what premiership I won in 2003, my only one. Now, what I want to touch on is obviously your role now within the female space. Why did you decide to take that on as a role, or did the club come to you in regards to that role, or was it a bit of both? Was it a mutual?
I came to the club.
You came to the club, yep.
Yep. So last year I coached.
Yep.
I was the assistant coach for the reserves. You've now taken that role, mate. Big shoes to fill, I understand. It's
Massive
okay.
shoes to
Massive,
fill.
good 7.5s.
Yep.
Yep.
I'm an 8, so I'm not much
Oh,
bigger
you're not
than
far
you,
off, mate, not far off. So I came to the club at the end of the year and just sort of said there was a bit of a disconnect between our coaching group and our playing group, and that's just sometimes how it is.
Mm-hmm.
We had a few things going on off the field, and there was nobody there for the girls to just be like, hey, are you okay? And a big thing is mental health, whether it be in men's sports or women's sports. Mental health is number one, and just having somebody there going, how you going today? You never know how important it is until you don't have that person. And we didn't have that person, but I played a few games with the team, and that's when I sort of realised that we need that person. So I came to the club and I said, I believe we need this. I've worked in the professional AFL space, and there's always been a welfare manager or a well-being manager. And I said, what's the difference? Why can't we have it in the community club? I said, I'm willing to volunteer, I'm willing to do it. It's not a paid position, it is a complete voluntary position. And I said, the girls need this. And I explained to them why the girls needed it. And honestly, this year we have seen a massive difference in our girls just having somebody that's there. If they don't feel comfortable going to their coaches or their leadership group, they have another outlet that isn't another teammate kind of thing. So
Yeah, look, I think it's an incredibly important role, and I think you're probably one of the best people for that space. And coming into the women's football this year like I have, you can see that there's a lot that goes on in their lives, whether it be work or I would say ladies' issues, I'll say that on TV, but certain things that go on in the female space, and I think it's hugely important, your role and what you're doing with them, because you're right, sometimes they don't just want to go to a coach, and they see you as that person where they can, sort of, what's the word I'm looking for, as a sounding board for that sort of thing. And I think you've been doing incredibly well in that space, and it's very commendable of you to put your hand up to do that job, because I know at times it can be a tough position to be in, and I have no doubt you've been in some tough positions this year within that role. But I know you've got a huge amount of respect from the girls in our space, so I think it's a credit to yourself and the club that we've taken you on to do this role.
I think to be one of the first community clubs to have it as well. So we don't just have it in the female space, we have it in the men's space as well. When we presented the program to the men's earlier in the year, they also said, well, we'd love that as well. And it's an absolute credit to the club in the fact that they've gone, definitely. So they've put it in both spaces. It's very important. Richo is amazing at what he does in the men's space. And it's taking away that stigma about, you shouldn't speak up, but it's really enhancing that it's not weak to speak. So if you're having an off day on the ground or you're having an off day off the ground, there's that opportunity to be able to speak up, let it off your chest, and let's help you just continue on. I think it's hugely important in our game, and I think it's something that's really missed in community footy. And I think for Grange to just not even blink an eye, when I brought it to Dean and Trowell, they didn't even blink an eye at it. They said, no, we need this. And I think that's hugely commendable. I had a big backing from Maxi as well, and to sort of hear it from you as well, to say that you can see the difference as a coach, that just means what we're doing is so much more than just having a chat with somebody because they want to train.
Absolutely, and you can see that the club has the support behind the girls now. I really do feel that within the space, and obviously with mental health at the moment being front and centre, 100%. And the girls, when they seem to be happy and enjoying themselves and life, that they play better footy.
That's it.
Who would have thought?
Who would have thought?
Now, apart from your beautiful partner Meg, any interest, hobbies outside of sport? Maybe some greyhounds and punting or horses?
Horses,
sorry,
we have
not
a couple
dogs.
Of horses, yes. So Meg and I do have two beautiful racehorses, whiskey and beer, suitable. Meg drinks beer, I drink whiskey and beer.
Except for Coopers.
Yeah, all about the Coopers.
Yeah.
So we've got whiskey and beer, and we've got Star of the Nile. So she's currently in the paddock, being a horse at the moment, and he's on track at the moment. But yeah, I've got a couple of them. I have had a greyhound, actually.
You have had a greyhound?
I have had a greyhound. Wasn't a bad one, actually. But I bought into it with a couple of the boys at Yeronga. Had a bit of fun.
Yep.
It was a good time. Didn't make millions, but that's okay. You don't get into it to make millions. What else would I do? Well, we have a beautiful puppy, as you know.
Yes, I've seen your
Dusty.
puppy. Dusty.
She's a handful, but she's there.
Did you name that after Richmond's?
No, I'm sorry, mate. I'm sorry. It's actually named after Slim Dusty.
Slim Dusty.
She's definitely named after Slim. I have a few hobbies outside of footy. I am actually a giant nerd at heart.
Yeah.
I love planes, aeroplanes.
Okay.
Surprisingly enough.
This might get you a fine.
This could really get me a fine, but that's okay. I really like aeroplanes. My dad.
What's your favourite aeroplane?
It'd have to be the Airbus A380.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the big bopper. That's the big dog.
one. Yeah. But the Dreamliner would have to definitely be up there as my second favourite.
Yeah.
But my dad was in the Air Force.
So that's where it
had that interest.
Yeah.
I actually have a huge. I have a comic book collection.
That's right.
Would you believe? But I, no surprise to anyone, am actually massive into sports. So
I want to hear more about the comic book collection.
it's pretty impressive, mate. I'm a DC fan. So
Okay.
if anybody's a Marvel fan, sorry, I'll have to switch off
Wow.
now. No, I like the Green Arrow, and I don't know. I kind of got into it. In hospital, you don't have loads to do,
Okay. Yeah.
and you don't want to be staring at four walls. And yeah, I kind of got into it then, and it just kind of flowed on from there. And when Meg and I met, she was kind of like, "Oh, this is a bit weird," but she got around it. She got around it eventually.
She saw that there was more than Whitey than just the comics.
Yeah, she saw there was more than that. But no, I'm a massive sports fan more than anything. Like
Yeah.
I love Formula One.
Yep.
Love the Formula One. We went down earlier.
You went down to the Grand Prix. Yeah.
Yeah, we went to the Grand Prix, and we're planning a big trip. Hopefully, in the next couple of years to sort of follow it around a little
Overseas,
bit,
nice.
which would be cool. But yeah, I'm a massive sports fan. I actually play NFL fantasy.
Yep.
So I have a couple of fantasy teams, much to Meg's disgust, because I'm always talking about it. But love the NFL because it's very strategic. I love the strategic part of the NFL. So, but sports are my diehard passion.
Yeah, I can see that. Well, look, Whitey, thank you very much for being on Gorilla Talk.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate having and sharing your personal story. It was lovely, and all the best in the player welfare space. And if you go on to coaching, because I certainly
Might make a comeback,
I
mate.
certainly
Might
see a
make a
coaching
comeback.
there someday. So thank you very much for your
Thanks
time.
very much for having
Thanks,
me.
mate. Cheers.
Cheers.